Hello, I am Moodita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. In the last video, I expanded my train network out to the swamp and the entrance of the Dune Desert. I added a new factory to produce another 3,000 aluminum and 4,500 copper ingots. Today, I'm going to use the majority of those new ingots in a new factory here in the swamp. I'm going to be making 20 pressure conversion cubes per minute. If I've done my math correctly, that should be all that I need for the rest of the save. I've been scaling up production for all the basic parts. That has increased the amount of machines I need for each factory, but it really hasn't made things too complicated yet. This factory is going to add a lot more machines, load balancing, and headaches. Let's dive into it. For this one, we're starting off at the hub. The last video was really the first time that I've spent any extended time in the swamp, which means I've collected quite a few remains. Good old leaves I should probably clear out of here, and wood. And most importantly, the power slugs. Let's throw it all in the wood chipper. We are at the end. I might as well upgrade everything to Mark 6 now. There we go. That moves along a little bit faster now. Normally, I throw these in my dimensional depot, but it's actually completely full. I think it's time to make a few inhalers. I really wish I could automate these. Now I can replenish my stock here and add a few more. One good huff for good luck. Ah, that's the stuff. The last thing I want to do, I haven't taken a look at the awesome sink in a while. Oh, look at that. In my last series, which I didn't actually finish the game in, I had a ton of coupons, and I never ended up getting the golden nut because I wanted to save it for the end of the game, and then I never got there. So, I'm learning my lesson, and we're going to print out 500 at a time. My 1,000, we're getting that golden nut now. The most expensive thing in the shop. Give me one, please.
Congratulations, you are now a contributor to a popular Pioneer trend. In earlier testing phases of the Save the Day program, pioneers could not get enough of these nuts, to the point of featuring nuts in every single picture they took. This obsession eventually became unhealthy, and pioneers were taught the skill of restraint and not holding anything in their hands. Still, to honor the love humanity had for these nuts, a statue was commissioned, so we can honor the impact these nuts had on pioneers across the universe.
Oh, it's beautiful. It may also be backwards. Whoops. That's fine. It can face the hub. And there it is. My first golden nut since the game has officially launched. Feels good. Hopefully many more trophies to go. I want to create like a whole trophy room and buy up a bunch of those. Ramping things up here in the last phase will definitely boost my ticket production. Now that I've resupplied my biomass and hopefully gotten a few power slugs left over. Oh, not as many as I was hoping. Okay, so we've got the full dimensional depot and then an extra 62. Not bad, but I may need to keep doing some slug hunting. If I have to, I'll do a temporary setup for the power shards, but I want to see if I can just put it off until I actually automate it. There's still plenty of slugs out there. I'll be fine. We take a look at the map here. And I know I get questions on most of my videos, so if you're curious about how to get all of this to show up on the in-game map, it is the cartograph mod, and it should also be listed in the description. Think of it as the Satisfactory Calculator's interactive map, just in-game, which is really nice. I love the mod. The only downside for me is now that I'm at the end game, and my save file is getting a little bit bigger, and my computer is definitely not new. It is in fact kind of getting old. It took about 20 minutes for it to completely load. So if you don't see it in the future, that's probably why. At the end of the last video, I talked about extending my train line up north through the Dune Desert a little bit, so I went ahead and did that in between videos. because I naively thought I would actually get to that by the end of this video. Oh, past me from a week ago. We are not going to get to the desert at all. Today, we are going to be solely in the swamp. Out here in the swamp, I currently have a train station. This little guy down here is my petroleum coke using the crude oil. This is a bunch of water extractors feeding this factory, which is making 3,000 aluminum ingots and 4,500 copper ingots. I need to use something like 80% of those aluminum ingots in today's project, which I'm just going to build on the other side of the swamp out here because it's got plenty of room. My train stations are the logistics hubs of the area, so all of the finished products from this factory are headed underneath the train station. I'll do all of my load balancing there and send what I need out to the new factory, which will be probably just right over here. I need a whole bunch of different resources for this project, but the aluminum probably takes up the bulk of it, and so it just makes sense to put this one out here next to it. Let me hop in my train and head out to the swamp, and then I'll go over the plan. And we are back in the swamp. So we've got the train station here, we've got the aluminum and copper factory. The petroleum coke is down there in the corner, and then the water one's behind it. And so if we take a look to the other side over here, this is where the factory is going to go. Thankfully, there's not too much in the way right here, but I'm probably just going to level this whole area. Thank you, explosives. But before I get to that, let's go over that plan. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to be making 20 pressure conversion cubes per minute. To do that, I'm going to be using a whole bunch of different alternate recipes. I wish I could tell you I had a really good method for picking which alternate recipes to go with and all of that, but I'll be completely honest. Sometimes I just pick recipes because I haven't used them before or it's been a long time and I think it would be interesting, which is the reason why I'm using the heavy flexible frame recipe. When making heavy modular frames, I pretty much always use the recipe that I think everyone uses, the heavy encase frames, I think it's called, to the point where I don't actually know if I've ever set up a real factory using any other recipe. And now that I have the Mark 6 belts, dealing with 2080 screws can't really be that bad, right? So for a recipe like that, that is the reason I'm using it. It's probably not the most efficient or the easiest to work with, but I thought it would be fun. And because that recipe uses a decent amount of rubber, I can use other recipes that utilize the rubber to hopefully lessen some of the other materials that I need. Like the insulated crystal oscillators are a fantastic alternate recipe. And one of my favorite recipes is the adhered iron plate. If you need to make a decent amount of reinforced iron plate, this one is amazing. Because instead of dealing with screws or wire, you get to deal with rubber, and it's at a 1-for-1 ratio. Because I'm making 150 reinforced iron plates per minute, I only need 150 rubber for this step. I'm using the aluminum beam recipe, so instead of making a whole bunch of steel beams, I can take 220 aluminum ingots and turn that into 220 steel beams. And there's another really cool new alternate recipe using aluminum ingots that'll go straight to iron rods. Unfortunately, the rates just don't line up right. I don't want to make extra iron rods, and I don't really want to deal with a fraction of an iron ingot later on. All of this to say is there is quite a bit of thought that goes into the planning phase of the factories, but I never said that thought process actually makes sense. All of the inputs that are colored in green are the ones that are going to be coming from the train station. Everything else is either coming locally or I'm making it in the factory. In total, here's a list of all of the inputs that I need to basically plug into this new factory. About half of them are going to be coming by train. The rubber, plastic, deuterium ingots, and the quartz crystal. The aluminum and copper are already at the train station. Both the iron and the limestone are actually just right next to where I am right now. And then the nitrogen gas. That turned into a whole adventure by itself, but we'll get to that later. With a decent amount of stuff coming by train, I want to get those set up first, just so I can get that out of the way and make sure that the transfer rates are good. Let's go ahead and add another train station, and this one is going to be 4 freight cars. I need 930 rubber and 685 plastic per minute. We are right here, and rubber and plastic is on the complete opposite side of the world. I'm pretty sure I'm going to need 2 freight cars for both plastic and rubber. And now I can just extend this side. And the good old block signals kind of tell me where I need to go. So if I just bring this here and stretch this one out, I just want to go 2 foundations back. So to right here. That'll make a nice short 90-degree turn. Make sure to add more block signals. This way the train station is its own block. Hopefully it'll make all the trains exiting go a little bit smoother this way too. Now we've got Swamp 2. Turns out in my overeagerness to set up the new train station, I kind of forgot that I had already set this up. So this very first train station is actually the one I'm going to be using. I am still going to use that one. I still need the Caterium ingots, even though there is Caterium over in the corner of the swamp. The next biome over has a whole bunch of Caterium ingots in that train station. I might as well just bring those over. So I will be using that train station, but this one is already here and labeled. I need 930 rubber in total, so 465 in each freight car, and then 342.5 for each of the plastic ones. The first 2 are rubber, so this is the way I'm going to go about it. I'm going to have these come back towards me, and I just need 1, and that way I can figure out where I want to put this storage unit. And I only need a small one for this very first one, and I will show you why in just a second. You need to get these lined up right in front of each of the floor holes. And that one's not actually connected, so go ahead and delete it. Really, I can use any speed. I'll just use Mark 6 because the whole purpose of the very first storage container is just to unload all of the freight platforms as quickly as possible. And then from there, now we're going to work with the industrial storage containers. So this first one is for the rubber. And thankfully for this, it's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and place a merger just back here. I'm getting 465 from each of these. So it's going to unload as quickly as possible. But from here, I just need to make sure that this belt is faster. So I can do Mark 4 for both of these. And then I'll need a Mark 6 into here. Now, how do I get 930? Well, it's about the easiest load balancing I'm going to do today. We're going to do a Mark 6 belt into a splitter. And then we take a Mark 3 lift and we send it back. And that's it right there. 1200 minus 270 gives me my 930. Gotta love when the numbers line up like this. And now the plastic. I'm going to do the same thing with the merger. Mark 4 for both of these. And then this one actually only needs to be a Mark 5, because in total I'm dealing with 685 plastic per minute. And here we start the fun stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and follow my diagram like normal. And to make sure that everything has enough space here, I'm going to go ahead and start with the first splitter out here a little bit. And then the merger. And then there's an empty space right here, but just to get the spacing right, I'm going to go ahead and place it. And then place this last one, and we're going to delete this one. If I stick to a pattern for this spacing, then everything just lines up pretty nicely. So unfortunately with this one, we've got this in the way, and I really could do a whole bunch of things to get around it, or I could just bring things out a little bit farther. I've got plenty of space. So this row will just go all the way out to here, and that's going to start with a splitter here. And then if I go back this way, lines up a little bit better. I just need 3 more splitters. And then I can switch to my mergers. And then here is the only one on this side. And if we go to the very front here, I just need 2. 1 and 2. And now just a little bit of belt work. The Mark 5 gives me 780. And now I need to bring that down to 685. So if I take 780 and I split it in half, it would try to put 390 on each one. But if I only put a Mark II belt, only 120 will fit on here. And because this belt is full, it'll keep this one full. Which means the other 660 is going to go this way. With this 120, we're going to split it all 3 ways. So we've got 40, 40, and 40. We'll take that 40, split it in half. So there's 20, and there's 20. So now out of this merger is 680. Going into this splitter is 20, split it in half, 10, and 10. Split that one in half. There's my 5. And now I've got my 685. For the rest of it, it just pretty much all gets grouped together. Let's go ahead and just move this 1 more meter out. That way we don't have any funky clipping going on. And that 15 will plug into this merger. Here's 80. And here's the 85 that I need to loop back. And I could do it into here, but I think what would be a little bit more reliable is for them just to not compete. I could use a priority merger as well. But part of the reason I like using the industrial storage container for this is it has the 2 inputs. Now these don't quite work like mergers, because if I let the whole thing fill up, then one of these will just get prioritized. It won't alternate the 2. So this system works out great. However, if I let the trains just back everything up, then it won't work so great. And this is why I normally do the unloading side first. I set up all my load balancing. I'm going to set up the sinks, and that way when I turn the train on, it'll drop its cargo off, it'll go through the load balancing and immediately start sinking, and I don't have to worry about things backing up. Now it's time to get good use of my world-spanning train line, and I'm going to hop in my train and head all the way over to the other side of the world to my plastic and rubber, and get the load balancing for the loading side of this train setup. Hasn't been that long, but it's always nice to come back and see everything working just the way it's supposed to be. And taking a look at the sinks, yeah, they fluctuate just a little bit, but looking good. Now it's time to use 93% of this. First, I need to add on a little bit more space because I need another train station. It means I need to extend this just a tiny bit. But thankfully, good old blueprints. As easy as that. But the one thing I noticed is past me just didn't quite design this right. I obviously had the intention of giving it enough space in case there was a second train, because why else would you leave this gap? The only problem is this isn't the same length as a full train. So if the second train is shorter, then sure, that works out fine. But if I have a locomotive and 4 freight cars, I need 10 foundations worth of space. And this is only 6. Because I plan on making this area just kind of my hub for plastic and rubber for the foreseeable future, there's still enough oil out here that I can make a bunch more. Spreading it out throughout the map would probably be a much smarter idea, because then it wouldn't be all concentrated just in one spot, and there would be less traffic, and there's a whole host of reasons why. But why do that when I could just make this a logistical nightmare in the future and just have all of my plastic and rubber coming from one location? But I don't want to purposely make things too hard on myself. So I think now that I finally realized it, I think it's going to be time to extend this. I'm going to extend it the 4 foundations, and then this right here is probably just going to have to take place. It's just going to branch out in between these 2 pillars instead of those 2 pillars. Which also means I'm going to need to replace these quite a bit farther over, and yeah, it shouldn't really be that bad. I just need to add 4 foundations and then stretch everything out this way. Before I start adding more stuff, let me knock this out. Ta-da! The train station is a little bit wider, and I added the next train station. All the trains except for mine are going to turn off this way right here. Mine is the only one that would go straight so that it can come around and loop back into this very first train station. Trains coming from that direction come this way in the main entrance, come out to the side, join up, and then go to their appropriate train station. I know that at least one of these train stations has 2 trains that stop at it. Now, if the longer train is the second one to show up, it has plenty of room to sit here, and it frees up all of these blocks so that any other trains that are coming in won't have to wait for that one to finally enter the train station. Because if it was overhanging by just a little bit, then this block signal would stay red until it moved on. I'm pretty sure that this will just save me a lot of headache in the future as I just add more and more trains. But man, if you haven't played around with trains too much, they just take up a lot of space. So just to give you an example, just how much space these train stations take now. So if you're using similar sized trains in your world, where it's basically 1 locomotive and 4 freight cars, and you want to make sure that your train stations have enough space to have the train station and enough buffer room for one extra train, you're looking at about 30 foundations in this direction. And then the other direction is just how many train stations you want. If you're going to lay it out like this, which I'm not saying is the optimal way. It really would not surprise me if there's better ways to do it. But so far, this is working out for me. And underneath the train is the logistic area. The plastic and rubber from that second factory are coming in right here. And the next train station is going to be plugging in right here. And so I'm going to do a very similar thing. Make sure these face the right way. Actually, this one doesn't matter. I'm just going to replace it. But on the loading side, I definitely only need small ones. With the lifts in place, all I need in front of them is just a splitter. I'll be doing the load balancing to take the 1000 rubber down to 930, and then the 800 plastic down to the 685, I think it is. Once I have the amounts I need, they'll just go straight into a splitter, and that way each freight car gets exactly half. The first two freight cars are the rubber. Alright, so I think if I start just somewhere over here, I might have to move this later, but I think I'll have plenty of room. I'm just going to follow the diagram, and I'm going to start with a smart splitter, although I don't think I actually need it to be a smart splitter, and I'll tell you why in just a second. And I'll go ahead and place a splitter all the way out here. So I want to limit this down to 120, so that's going to be a Mark II belt. But since the initial belt plugging in isn't completely full, and there are going to be some gaps on there, I'm going to use a faster speed belt to make up for it, but it'll still get limited down to the 120 that I need. Because it's not a full belt, I'm going to go ahead and use the smart splitter as well, just to make sure. So it's going to prioritize to the right, and then the overflow will go center. The rubber belt has 1000. So when it goes into a splitter, if this was a normal splitter and I was going to split it 2 ways, it would put 500 and 500. And as long as I'm using this faster speed belt trick, I don't really think this needs to be a smart splitter. But at the same time, I can also just use the smart splitter and make sure it does what I want it to do. From this splitter, I just need a couple more. We're just going to place 2 splitters above it. And then 1 merger here off to the side. And then above the smart splitter, I just need 2 mergers. The second one is going to be facing to the left. So the initial rubber belt will be coming in from over here. So that'll be the 1000. We're going to split off 120, leaving 880 right here. This 120 is going to get split in half. So 60 and 60. There's 30 and there's 30. And then 10. 10, and 10. And so here is my extra 70, which is going to go on a little bit of a journey around these, and then go all the way to the front, and it's just going to continue to get sunk. And then at the very front here, I have some signs, and I'm going to have to update that after this train gets running. So I definitely do not have that much free plastic and rubber after this. That is going to go down to 70. Still have a good amount of plastic left though. Added this merger, I've got my 930. Let's go ahead and place that there. And there. Now for the plastic. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the smart splitter. Even though I probably don't need to. Just a meter or 2 of the Mark II belt to make sure that it gets limited down to 120. And then the faster Mark III. Set up the smart splitter for any to the left and overflow straight ahead, which will give me 120 going this way and 680 going that way. And I just need to make 685. So that's what all of this load balancing is going to be doing, is taking that 120 and siphoning off 5 to join up with that bit. But that's not too bad. I just need a row of splitters. I just need 1, 2, and 3 more. And now just a bunch of mergers. So we can just place a line of mergers on the left of all these splitters here. And then 1 more that is in line with the very first smart splitter and the last splitter. Like I said, there's going to be 680 on this belt. And now we just need to do the load balancing with this 120 coming into here. 40, 40, and 40. There's 20 and 20, 10 and 10, and then 5, and there's my 5. So with this one, we're just going to go on just a tiny bit of a journey. I could obviously use old stubby, or I could just snake this around and keep it all flat. On this side, we've got 80, which then turns into 100, and then 110. And here's the 105, which is just going to go on the other side of this. And then it too is going to go to the very front of the factory and get sunk. So I'm pretty sure for what I have left, I only need one sink. And we're back. I polished things up a little bit, rearranged it to better use the space, and then I added my signs. So I know I'm not going to come back here for this video, which means that I probably won't be back here for more than a week or something, which gives me plenty of time to completely forget what amount is on which belt, and the signs will just save me so much headache. The rubber is going to plug in on this side, and then the plastic is going to plug in right there. So let's go ahead and delete these and get this started. I realized the way that I originally set that up was a little bit overkill. I could easily use one storage container and then split it instead of doing it ahead of time and having two storage containers. Because on the loading side, you only have to deal with it pausing for the 30 seconds when it docks, and so really you don't need a big buffer at all. For me, it's usually only on the unload side where I need the bigger storage container. Now that that's started, let's build a train. I need a locomotive and 4 freight cars. And the last 2 obviously need to be blue for plastic. Swamp plastic rubber chew. Can't believe it all fits. We're gonna go from this one, rubber plastic 4, the good old swamp one. Normally I would pick one of these and I would click on the cogwheel and I would switch it and I would have it wait at one of the 2 stations. But since we're going from the west coast all the way to the east coast, and it is not a straight trip, we've got to go all the way down and then back up. I don't think I should have this one wait. This is going to be one of my few trains that just runs. I would love to be able to use the freight wagon is fully loaded and unloaded, but that only works if every freight car is getting the exact same rate. Because plastic and rubber are coming in at 2 different rates, that setting just does not work for this. So let's go ahead and get it started. And there it goes. That should be plastic and rubber taken care of for this new factory. I'll have to keep an eye on the throughput, but I feel pretty confident. Now I'm going to hop in my train and I'm going to head over to basically the middle of the map. The Titan Dune Forest, I think, is this biome right here. It's where I'm making all of my aluminum and a whole bunch of the endgame items already. But I'm also making a whole bunch of quartz and caterium using this lake right here. And that's what's going to end up on the second train. I will see you when I get out there. And we're back to the Titan Dune Forest. I'm really happy with the way this area has turned out. Right across from the train station is the source of my caterium and quartz. And if I head underneath, I added some labels. So at least I know what's on what belt. So the red numbers are the ones going out, green numbers are the ones coming into the train station. I need 80 caterium ingots and 200 quartz crystals. Now normally I prefer my ratio splits because I just like the way that they work and it doesn't rely on manipulating belt speeds or anything like that. But this train station is getting a little bit crowded. So in the interest of saving some space, I'm going to go ahead and use some smart splitters to try to make things a little bit smaller. I've already added a train. The first car is going to be caterium. The second one is going to be the quartz, which put the floor holes right here. And unfortunately, not really the easiest spot to work with. So I think I'll add my buffers just right here. I'll do my load balancing here. And then I'll just have some lifts to run on the ceiling and connect into the train station there. The quartz is the very farthest one here on the right. I'm going to grab my smart splitter, get it in line with this one. And trying to give myself enough space to get the other belts out somewhere if I need to. Gonna push this one back here. I'll add a lift right after the wall hole, and then the full 1125 is gonna get plugged in right here. Center is gonna get changed overflow, and the left output is gonna be any. And here's the diagram I'm gonna use. You'll notice there's a little bit extra going on here, and that's because I made this for a project I don't even know how long ago. Probably quite a while. And because I've already shown this off, and load balancing the 80 for the Caterium is really easy, I already set up the unload side over at the swamp. And so this diagram can basically do both for me because I'm not working with the full 1125 of the quartz. I'm using the smart splitter trick here. I'm only going to be working with the 270. Let me show you. From the smart splitter, the priority is going to be going to the left. So I'm going to place a splitter right here. And I am going to work with 270. So we're going to place a little bit of a Mark III. And then the rest of it is going to be Mark IV. Even though 1125 is really close to being full, this just gives me the peace of mind that this will stay completely full. Because there will be occasional gaps on there. This way, I just won't have to worry about it. Now I can follow the diagram just as it's listed. From the splitter, I'm going to place 2 more mergers. And then to the left of the first splitter, it'll go another splitter. And then a splitter above it. And then 1 more merger. But instead of placing this merger down here like it is in the diagram, this one I'm just going to place right on top of that splitter. And I'm also going to need 1 more merger, and I'm going to place that on top of the first smart splitter. Alright, so for the belts, taking the 270 and splitting it all 3 ways, we've got 90, 90, and 90. So that's 30. And now we're going to use both of the other outputs. And to do that, we'll just use 2 lifts. So there's 30 and there's 30. This 30 gets split into thirds. 10, 10. And for the last one, we'll do a stubby little lift. Delete the splitter. And it'll plug into this spot of the merger. Coming out of this merger, we've got 70. And that is going to plug into that merger. We've got 90, 90, and 10. This is 190 plus the 10. Here is my 200. And for that, we'll probably just use a lift. And I'll place that container over there. Now to finish this off, we've got the merger on top of the smart splitter. The overflow is coming out of this output, which is going to be 855. For that, I need a Mark 6 lift. And then from here, I can connect it back up to the sink. For the Caterium, it's even easier. I'll probably mess around with where exactly it's going to get placed, and I'll just show you where. But because I only need 80, this is really simple. I just need a Mark II. But again, this isn't going to be a full belt because it's going to be Mark V, but there's only going to be 600 on it. I'm going to use a bit of the faster belt to make sure this is completely full. Then I know that this will have 120 going into here. I just need to group up 2 of the 40s. And then the output of here will group up with the overflow. And then do the same thing and continue to sync. Give me a second and I'll polish this up. Now it's all color coordinated. Much better. The only thing that didn't quite line up, and I guess I could have moved this over by just a little bit, was this Caterium. Well, hopefully it won't take too long and I'll send these Caterium ingots somewhere else. And this belt and lift will get deleted anyways. Both the quartz and the Caterium are working away like they're supposed to be. And since this is the loading side, I really only need the small containers. And so I just added a little bit more up top here and just squeezed them in. And hey, the throughput monitors let me know I actually did it right. It's time to hop back in the train and head out to the swamp again. Both trains are up and running, so now I can take a look and make sure that my load balancing is actually correct on this side. Both the rubber and the plastic look good. Yeah, there's the 685 I was looking for. The quartz should look pretty familiar. It's just that the merger is on the ground instead of lifted on top of the splitter. And you gotta love load balancing 80. And like I normally do, these are all just going into sinks so that I can test out the throughput, make sure the train portion of the factory is looking good before I start relying on it. Now I can let the trains run for a little while I build the factory. And now it's that time. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more demolition. Although, there's one thing if you're in the swamp, and I think I recently kind of depleted, not all of it, I still have some mycelia. Why do I need it at this point? I really have no idea. But out of all of the resources, this one's a little bit more rare. And the swamp actually has a lot of it, so if you ever want lots more mycelia, just come to the swamp and look for these little guys. So especially just right out here, you'll find a whole bunch of it. I can stock up on a whole bunch of mycelia, probably more than I'm ever gonna need, but there's a couple uses for it. One of the great things about the codex is it tells you everything it ends up being used for. I'm not going to use it for biomass. I've got the fabric automated, but there are 2 different inhalers that I can use the mycelia for. So I figure I might as well just load up my dimensional depot and make sure that's topped off. I'm going to grab a bunch of that and then probably clear out just all the trees that are just right around this ring. My first thought was, well, it would be fun to work around this thing. But honestly, it doesn't go that tall, and I think my logistics floor is pretty much going to be just the height of that. So I could keep it, but I don't think I would ever see it. So there's a good chance I'm just going to destroy that thing. There's other ones. It's not like it's the only one out here. Let me clear this up and place some foundations. Now I have somewhere to place some machines. I've got the first floor and the logistics floor placed. I gave myself plenty of room for that logistics floor to be able to do any of my belt shenanigans because it's not too far from the train station, and so a lot of it is just going to be on one big old belt highway that's going to come over. And I decided to leave it. Might as well just work around it. I've got so much space down here, and it gave me an excuse to use some more of the fun little curved corners. I really don't think I need this much space down here. But one of the lessons I've learned is if you are going to use a logistics floor, you really can't go wrong with giving yourself too much space. This factory is going to be pretty decently sized. So let me show you. It is going to be 20 foundations in total. I'm giving up 1 foundation on each side for the walkway. The usable space is going to be 18 in this direction. And then 12 foundations this way. So 10 usable foundations for the machines. Just a quick look at the spreadsheet again. I've separated all of these into the floors that they're going to be on. The very bottom floor is going to be the iron ingots and iron rods. For the iron rods, I would normally need 40 constructors if they were clocked to 100%. I'm going to fully overclock them, so I only need 16. The iron ingots are mostly going to be going to the iron rods, but some of them are going to go 2 floors higher and get turned into iron plates. So there's a couple different ways I can go about this. And let's just place down some machines real quick so you can see why I'm going to do it the way I'm doing it. Alright, so for the constructor, I'm going to be using the default iron rods, fully overclocked. It needs the intake 37.5 and it'll output 37.5. Now with the smelter, if I completely overclock these, well, that just so happens to output 75, which would be exactly what 2 constructors need. And that is pretty convenient. Now, the downside is, like I just mentioned, not all of the iron ingots are going to this process. In total, I need 825 iron ingots. And if each smelter is going to be doing 75, well, now I need 11 smelters. So this is normally where I would round up and I would place 12. But if I did that, then they're going to output 68.75. So it's basically which side of the smelter do I want to do the load balancing on? Do I want to make this an 11-way split on the input, and then all of the numbers come out of the smelter really nice? Or do I want to make it really easy on the input side, and then have to do a ratio split into sending it to the rods and the plates? Well, since these have the recipes set, let's go ahead and figure out where these are going to go. Thankfully, with these, it's a nice and even number. And let's see, that is, oh, that is the halfway mark. And I don't think I need more than 2 foundations space up there. So here's 1. That's the first 8. There's 1/2. There's the other half. And we can delete those 2. And now for the smelters. These, I think I need a little bit more space on this side because I am going to do the 11-way split. I think that is ultimately going to be a whole lot easier. "16 constructors, 11 smelters." Let's start the belt work here at the beginning and we'll work our way through. So we're going to pair up all of the smelters. Obviously leaves 1. It's kind of off on its own, but that's all right. And then we're going to pair up those splitters. And now I've got 3. So with those, we're going to place a splitter, and for the spacing, it's just going to be right up next to that one. And like with any of the other prime numbers, because we're ultimately splitting this 12 ways and looping one of them back, we need to start with a merger. Alright, and as far as the actual belt work, I think it's easier if I just work backwards, at least for the numbers wise. Each one requires 75, so that's going to be Mark II for this one. And because we need to use them all equally, this one is going to get looped back all the way to this merger. That means this one is going to need to be 150. $300. Making this one 900. And then the initial 825 is just going to get plugged into the merger coming from over here. Because this section right here is going to be my lift elevator for the tower. And that right there is my 11-way split. For the rest of the factory, it should be pretty basic. I get to just pair all of these up. These need 37.5, so just mark 1 belt. And then into here, I need the 75, which happens to be what these are outputting. So for most of these, I should be able to plug them just straight in. All right. And that leaves me exactly 3. I can place a merger here. Here are the 225 ingots I need for the iron plates. Thankfully, all of the iron rods will fit on 1 belt, so I just need to group up all of those together. And then I need to add the next floor. And thankfully, I decided to make this out of blueprints, so just using a 5x5. So for this, I basically just stack it a whole bunch of times until I think it's at about the right height. I think that was a couple too many. I think I'll give myself a gap of 1, 2, 3, probably 4. So yeah, I placed a whole bunch too many, at least down here. Once we get towards the top of the tower, the machines will get a little bit bigger, and so will the floors. But for down here, we can keep them a little bit smaller. That's plenty of space. Let me fill this out, and we'll place some more machines. This is not needed at all. I easily could have just done a manifold, but I had the space, and I like the way that it looks. Now we move on to the next floor. This floor and the next one are probably 2 of my favorite floors of the factory once everything is on and working. But I'll be honest, getting everything to fit in here was kind of a mistake. I got it to fit, but really I should have just added 1 more floor. But instead of doing that, I'm going to be stubborn and I'm going to cram way too many machines onto this floor. This one is going to be all constructors. It's going to take care of the copper sheets, screws, steel beams, and concrete. The ones that are going to take up the most amount of space are the copper sheets. I need 18, even with them overclocked, and 12 for the concrete. So let's get the copper sheets out of the way, and we'll put these farthest from where the elevator is, because that means only 1 belt needs to make it all the way over here. Since this gap right here is 10 foundations wide, if I place 9 constructors with just a half a foundation of a gap, That should just fit inside. Perfect. And because space is going to be a little bit tighter, I am just going to manifold all the copper sheets together on that side for the outputs. But on this side, since there's 9, that's pretty easy to work with. That means a splitter for each 3 here. And things are going to be a little bit tight on this floor. So the splitters are going to be right up next to each other. Let's go ahead and set everything correctly though. Each constructor requires 50 copper ingots, which makes this 150, so we'll go to Mark 3. And then I'm going to need one more splitter right in the very middle. That's going to split the 2 halves of constructors. I think I did the math wrong. These aren't actually completely overclocked. I just assumed they were. I actually need 420 across 18. So just under fully overclocked. But all of the belts and everything works out the same. Instead of 150, this is actually going to be 140. Which would make this one right here 420. And the grand total of copper ingots that I need for the copper sheets is 840. So that will get plugged in right down this way. Now I just need to mirror this side. And that's the 18 constructors for the copper sheets taken care of. I want to take care of the next biggest group of constructors, which is the concrete. I need 12 of them for this, so I'm going to do the same thing, just 6 instead of 9. There we go. We'll make these brown. And let's set the recipe. These are just going to be overclocked to 200%. Makes the math nice and easy. And now I just need to copy that row on the side. And just a little bit of belt work. These need 90 limestone for each one, so mark 2 belts. These will be exactly 270 belts. 540 on each of these. And the 1080 limestone will get plugged in right here. I could have brought these a little bit closer together. I just wanted to give them each one full foundation for the outputs, which is definitely more than I needed. So if I really wanted to have those gaps in there, I could have brought these together. But it's all going to fit, and I think it's going to look pretty good. So things may get a little bit tighter on this side. In this space, I'm going to fit in the steel beams and the screws. Just going to need a few more constructors. In total, I need 8, which will give me 1 full foundation on this side and 1 on this side. So let's go ahead and just place them all. The first 4 are going to be using the aluminum beam alternate recipe. I'm going to make 220 across 4 machines, almost completely overclocked. Copy and paste that. And then for the second 4, these ones are going to be using the steel screw alternate recipe. So I'm going to be using some of those steel beams that I'm making, because the ratio 1 steel beam to 52 screws is pretty nice. I need 2080 across 4 machines. Exactly 200%. Each machine will output 520. And this is where the floor starts to get a little bit trickier. Obviously, load balancing 4 machines is nice and simple. I'm making 220 steel beams per minute, and to make the screws, I only need to send 40 over there. To make the steel beams, the aluminum ingots are just going to be coming from the item elevator here, and they'll get plugged in here. But now, it's time to do a little bit of load balancing. And where in the world am I going to do that load balancing? And this is why I said I really should have just added another floor, and I wouldn't have had to do what I'm about to do. But I thought something fun to work around for future me to make decorating just a little bit more challenging is, what if I just add a random offshoot to this floor just to give me the extra space? Because why not? It's not like I'm going to use that space for anything else. Using a wall, I can just kind of fake the floor hole, and I'll probably place this probably up here, so we'll have to make this section just a tiny bit taller. We'll go up 2 meters. But I don't need to load balance across all of them. Really, I just need to send one of them, because one of these machines is making 55, And I only need to split off 40 to send to those constructors. So for this, I'll just add a lift. Alright, so we'll start on this side. Be a little bit easier. It's going to go right there. So now that I've got the belt in place, because they just seem to actually connect better when you have the belt there. And once that's replaced, now I can just delete this wall. And I just need one on this side. Replace my foundations. And there we go. Now I've brought 55 over here, and I can do a little bit of load balancing. I didn't make a diagram for this one because it should be pretty easy to work out. I've got 55, and I need 40. So common denominator is gonna be 5. So I'm working with 11s here. So just like earlier, working with the prime number isn't really too bad. We're just gonna split it 12 ways and loop back one of them into this merger. So we start with the merger, and then we only need 3 splitters. So because I've got the space, we'll give them a little bit of room. And then I just need 1 merger on this side here. Alright, we've got our 55, and that's gonna plug in right there. We're gonna end up looping back 1/11th, which is 5. So this is gonna be 60. We split that in half. Here's 30, there's 30. Split this one in half. There's 15, and we'll just go ahead and place this just like this for now. There's the other 15. That is what's going to get grouped up with the other steel beams and go to a future floor. This 15 is getting split all 3 ways. So first off, we need to make sure we loop 1 part back. So we can go ahead and have this one go all the way around. And then the other 2 are going to plug into this merger. There's 5. And there's 5. So that was 30. And then there's the 10. Here's my 40. Now I'm just going to do the same thing I did here, but on this side, and then have that go up and over and plug in over here. But I already knew that was going to happen, so I placed this one backwards. Since I'm running a little short on space here, that's how we're going to have to plug this one in. Let me clean this up and add a few more belts, and I'll add the next floor, and we'll keep moving on. I've straightened up the machines and the belts, so everything looks a little bit more clean. Got the input belts brought down to here. May get a little bit interesting, but I'll figure it out. There should still be plenty of room to get it from here to there. And then I've got a whole bunch of output belts. When it comes time to get things from point A to point B, things may get a little bit interesting. But for the most part, everything is just going in one direction. Things just kind of float up in the factory, so I don't think it'll be too bad. Which brings us to the next floor. This one is going to take care of the encased industrial beams, circuit boards, iron plates, and quick wire. This is going to be another busy floor, but hopefully it won't be quite as bad. The way I'm going to lay this out is the 4 machines that I'm going to need for the encased industrial beams are going to go right here in the front. So I should have a decent amount of space here. And that'll give me plenty of space to get all of these other belts around. And then we're going to do the bulk of the machines back here. So let's go ahead and set these recipes first. I'm using the default encased industrial beams. And all 4 of these are going to be completely overclocked. Now if I take a look at the other 3 recipes, the amount of machines that I need, if I was only going to place them at 100%, would be 21 1/3, 6, and 10 2/3. Now with power shards, I can bring this down to 9, 3, and 6. Seems like a perfect time to make a new blueprint for 3 assemblers. Very basic, no recipe set. I just have the inputs, and then I just left the outputs blank because it's really easy to deal with, and I almost always have to delete them in some way anyways. But by doing this, it does save me a little bit of time. I'm going to start with the circuit boards because these need the most amount of machines, so I'm just going to do 3 of these blueprints next to each other. But there it is. Every once in a while I accidentally click it underneath the other blueprint. These are going to be doing circuit boards using the default recipe, copper sheets and plastic, 160 across 9 machines, 17 7/9. It's a good thing they all fit on one belt, and they're all going to one place. No load balancing required. I can just do a line of mergers here. For the last 2 recipes, I need 3 and 6 machines, so I'm just going to do another line of 9. These two sets of blueprints are all going to be the same. These will be using the Fuse Quickwire alternate recipe. 960 across 6 machines, 160 for each one. And then the last 3, I need to grab the recipe for. Well, this is one of those interesting situations. I actually need this recipe on the floor above, but this is the one that I need right now, so definitely taking this one. And weirdly, it won't let me scan a hard drive. Obviously, there is a recipe, and none of these are just like a single one. So it seems weird that it won't let me scan one. And I mean, I could just re-roll one of these, but I feel like I should be able to just scan a hard drive. Well, having more diamond recipes is never a bad thing, so I'm going to select one more. Now that there's 2 recipes in the list, will it let me scan a hard drive? Alright, so there we go. So in 10 minutes, I'll have that other recipe that I need. And now I can set these. I really like this recipe. These are going to be overclocked to 200%, 75 iron ingots, and 15 plastic to make 150 iron plates is really nice. That's really not a lot of plastic to just double the amount of ingots into plates. So those 3 machines will make 450 iron plates. Not too shabby. Well, as far as the belt work, some of it is going to be really easy. Just 150 into each one of these, and that's done. The quickwire, however, is going to 2 different places. 560 go to computers, the other 400 go to AI limiters. Thankfully, all the math works out really nice with this amount of machines. Each machine is outputting 160. 2 machines would be 320, which means I'm missing 80, which would be half of 1 machine. So to make that 400, I'm just going to place a splitter on the 3rd one in here. And then I just need 2 mergers. So one in front of here, and this one will be facing that way. 160 into each of these. 80 into here. 240 into here. There's the 450 iron plates. And here is 400 quickwire. And then I need to make sure I give myself enough space, so probably have to put that merger right there. But I can group up these 3. 3 of those is exactly 480, so that into there. And then here's the other half, so that's 80. And here is my 560. Well, that's the outputs done. And I wanted to get those out of the way first because these, I just need 2 splitters. Yeah, we're going to have to place these right next to them. It's okay. Thankfully, all the copper sheets and all the plastic that I need each fit on just 1 belt, or else dealing with these kind of numbers are just not really my favorite. And the way I always do these kind of machines is I put the higher number on the bottom, and that way the slower speed belt is on top, and just visually, I like the way that it looks. So this is going to need 640 plastic, and for that, these are going to come from all the way around. And this is going to be the first belt on this side. Hopefully I don't need to put this all the way against the wall. So for now, we'll just put it there. And then the other one, ooh, I may need to push all of these back. I've got the space here, so I'm probably going to just push this back by 1 meter so that I can fit the belt right here. I want this to be 1 meter back. And then I just need a stubby lift to get that into there. This is for the 320 copper sheets. Once I have a belt attached to either end, now I can change it to the appropriate speed lift. And then this one is just going to be the next belt. And that's going to go all the way back. I think to get enough space, I'm going to have to move these blueprints up 1 meter, and I'm going to need to move these back 1 meter. But just to show you, I'm just going to need 2 splitters. Well, although I guess those aren't quite lined up. And that'll connect these 2 blueprints and feed all 6 machines for the quickwire. And then these 3 are separate. So these ones will have their own belts right here. And then the 2 for those 6 machines will be right here. So I'll have 6 belts in total. And load balancing 4 is pretty easy. Perfect timing. MAM research is done. Let me readjust the spacing and clean this up. And then we'll move on to the next floor and use that new recipe. And it all fits just barely. There's quite a few belts. Obviously I could have stacked them, but where's the fun in that? Instead, there's very little stacking and pretty much everything gets displayed. And now we get to move on to the next floor of assemblers. This one is only going to be dealing with 2 recipes. The AI limiters and those reinforced iron plates that I just got the recipe for. The reinforced iron plates need way more machines, so let's get those placed first. I made a couple more assembler blueprints, and for this I'm just going to go ahead and put them on a hotbar. We'll place the first one on 1, and the right on 2. I think that's all I'm going to need for this part anyways. So if we remove all that, we can see if I place the assemblers really close together, you can't place the splitters in the very middle. You've got to pick one side or the other. And I think I'm going to redo the mergers. So I'm probably just going to have to do a straight line of them all. We'll go ahead and put them right there. Yeah, that should give me plenty of space to do all my load balancing. So now I'm just going to alternate one going to the left and then the right. But for whatever reason, they don't line up the same. Kind of strange. But hey, good old nudge fixes that. And the reason for alternating them like this is if they're right next to each other, I can't fit this splitter in here. That's too close. So these two will have their splitters in the middle like this. Those two like that. One more in the middle, and that's all the splitters we need for that side. And then we're going to have one more in the very center. That should be the very center. Perfect. And then we have the exact same thing on this side. And then I made one more assembler blueprint that does have them spread out a little bit wider so that you can put it in the very center. But this right here, to get the spacing the same, especially if you wanted to tile them across, takes up a good amount more space than if you put them right next to each other like that. But since I only need 2 assemblers for the AI limiters, this blueprint's great. These are overclocked to 200%. I'll be making 20 in total. Now I can use my new adhered iron plate alternate recipe that I just unlocked. And instead of 40 machines, I only need 16 if I completely overclock these. That's some pretty basic belt work to get that all load balanced. So let's just skip ahead real quick. All tidied up. So the outputs are going to go all the way around the whole floor, because there's only 150 in total. So they definitely all fit on one belt, and those will come along here and then go up to the appropriate floor. The AI limiters just have a real short belt, and then the inputs are pretty simple. Now we can move up to the next floor, which again is all assemblers. But this one is only going to be making one recipe. This floor is definitely going to have the most amount of free space, but it was just going to be too hard to try to squeeze in the 20 assemblers with pretty much anything else. So these ones get their own floor. And it's going to be pretty similar to what I just did, except for since I have so much room, I can use the wider 2 assembler blueprint. And because I need 20 of these, and that's them being completely overclocked, because normally I would need 50. I'll have 10 on one side and then 10 on the other side. And then they're already grouped in pairs, so it's basically the 2 inputs will get split in half, and then I'll do a 5-way split on either side. So let's go ahead and get these placed first. That's all the machines, and them being spaced out like that does take up a good amount of space. Even though this looks like a ton of space, I am probably going to have to smash some things up next to each other. So with the 5-way split, one set of the splitters is going to go to all 3 outputs, and that's going to be this one, the one that's kind of in the front. That takes care of the first 3. These 2, this set of splitters is going to go a little bit farther out, right here, and right there. And then here in the very center, we do one more stack of splitters. And then we switch to a merger. And those mergers are going to feed into that splitter and that splitter. And there's just enough space for one last set of splitters. So that is where the initial amounts are going to plug in, right here. And then they get split in half to either side. Well, the game crashed while I was doing that, and I just skipped ahead a little bit. So I got all the machines placed, and then I finished placing all of the belts. But it was pretty much everything that I showed already, just with belts added. But I am definitely missing one because both of these splitters need to send back to the merger here. There we go. The inputs come into the initial splitters. They get split into half. They go into the 2 mergers. And then from there, we're just doing the 5-way split. That gets split in half. And then those splitters use all 3 outputs. So it's splitting it 6 ways. But that 6th one goes back to the merger. Like the floor below it, all 100 modular frames are going to get grouped up and then head to the front and then go up to whatever floor they're going to. Which brings us to the next floor. This one is all manufacturers. I'm going to be making all of the computers and crystal oscillators. I'm using alternates for both of these. With a little bit of overclocking, I need 6 machines for each. I've got some more blueprints. They're all very basic. I've got the center blueprint that has the splitters attached, and they're just facing either direction. And then I have the 2 different end pieces. And you'll see why I have the 2 different centers in just a second. I'm going to go this way. Actually, we're going to bring this all the way to the side. That is still enough room for 1 belt. And that will leave a little bit more room for all of the inputs on this side. Actually, I want this one to be the right one. I like having the lifts go in towards the center, basically. So that the very bottom one is the one that goes the farthest, and it's the one that's on the ground. It'll give it a nice little tiered effect. You'll see. We'll place that one there, and then we'll go with this one for the center. So the way I structured this blueprint, the beam will make it so that each one takes up a full 3 foundations. Now, if I don't want it to, I can just have them overlap. And that is exactly what I'm going to do for these. I am going to center this one right on this center line here. And then the machines are still spaced out enough. And then I grab the last one, and then I get it spaced out the same, so it'll be centered right here. And that leaves me 2 full foundations to get all of these inputs in here, because that's only 3. And now I just mirror it on this side. But what I should probably do is place the very middle ones. And see, if I try to use the same center blueprint, now all the splitters are lined up the wrong way. And so that's why I have 2 versions of this. Now, it'll line up pretty nicely. I don't know why I didn't include this splitter for the very bottom level, because that definitely should be there. I should probably fix that blueprint. These ones are going to be doing the crystal oscillators. So let's set this recipe. And I'm using the insulated crystal oscillator. I like this recipe. It doesn't seem like a lot, but there's only 2 options. But the default one only makes 1 per minute. And I will take an 87.5% increase per machine. Because if you ever need to make a lot of crystal oscillators, it takes so many manufacturers. For this, I'll be making 20 across 6 machines. Each one will make 3 1/3. Obviously, we got to make these purple since they're crystal oscillators, and they use quartz. Any excuse to add a little bit of color. And now I am just going to mirror this exact same thing on this side, except for it's going to be making computers. Now, it'd probably be smarter to bring this in a little bit closer, but I'm going to give it plenty of space there in the middle because I think it'll look good. These ones are going to be doing my Caterium computer alternate, and this is going to be 40 across 6 machines, overclocked to the same amount. Here's the floor with all the belts in place. Just enough room for all the belts over here. I wish I was able to get better use out of the sushi belts. There are going to be a few in this factory, but not as much as I would like. But here is one of them. All the crystal oscillators and computers definitely fit on 1 belt. So those are just going to get grouped up together and then go up a floor or 2. But pretty neat and orderly. I'm happy with this floor. And we move on to the next one, which is going to have a mix of both manufacturers and blenders. The manufacturers are going to be making my heavy modular frames, and I only need 3 of them. I'm going to go ahead and place them nice and close up here to the front. I need 6 blenders, and that actually takes up a decent amount of space. And we go back to the MAM to find the right recipe. I don't know if I've ever actually used this recipe. And I need 20. Thankfully, only needs 3 machines. Now, the interesting part with these are most of these are going to be real easy. The modular frames, encased industrial beams, and rubber definitely all fit on 1 belt for each one of these, right? The top belt is only going to have 20 on each one. The next one only has 33 1/3. And then even the rubber is only 133 on each of these. Does mean I need to change this one. But the screws, I need 693 1/3 on each belt. And the total amount of screws, 2,080, which are coming in on 2 Mark 6 belts. Now, I could have done the load balancing downstairs, and that's what I've done with a bunch of these other ones, but I thought it would be more efficient just to send the 2 belts up and do the little bit of load balancing right here. I haven't actually saved a lot of different balancers and ratio splits, but a 2 to 3 is actually one that I do have. And I have a couple different versions. This is just kind of the traditional version, which is probably the one I'm going to use. For fun, I did it with the curve belt mode, which I do actually really like the way that this looks. Just unfortunately takes up a bit more space. So unfortunately, the curved one just won't quite fit in this area. But what I'm going to have to do is just squeeze in a 2 to 3 belt balancer here. That way I can plug in my 2 belts of 1040, and each one will have exactly what each of these manufacturers need. Those will exit the item elevator, get plugged into here. Then I'm just going to have to get a little bit creative with getting some of these belts over there. But those are fun challenges. For the blenders, I just came up with 2 more very similar blueprints. So this one has the splitters and the junctions, and then this one doesn't. But as long as I line up the blueprints with these beams, everything should line up real nicely. I need 6 in total. My first thought was to do it just like I did on the floor below, where I have all of the inputs facing each other, because all of the inputs will fit on single belts in a pipe. However, if I did it that way, I run into this problem. I can't do the exact same thing I did with the inputs for the manufacturers because those are all solids. But with these ones, you run into the issue with the solids being on one side and the fluids being on the other. And I'm sure I could still figure out a way to do this. I could even offset them or something. There are plenty of ways to get around that issue. But instead of going about it that way, I'm just going to flip them around. So instead of having the inputs facing each other, I'm just going to have all of the outputs facing each other. And this way I just need enough space for the 2 belts and the 1 pipe to come in here. And then I'll do the splitting for everything in half just right over here. So there are the first 3. And to group them all together, I'm going to place 1 merger here. There's going to be a merger down this center line somewhere. And then I just mirror it on this side. So the very middle merger will go right there. And that way that one plugs into there, and this one just plugs in to there. And this is going to turn the 20 heavy modular frames into 20 fused modular frames. And I already have the recipe set for this one. I just need aluminum casings and nitrogen gas. And the outputs will just come along this side. And then these will all get grouped together. And to join the 2 sets of blueprints, I just need 1 set of splitters, followed by the junction. Now, if you hold control, it will kind of snap to the very top, although it doesn't snap exactly in the spot that I want, so I'm definitely not going to try that. Instead, I'm going to place it here on the ground, and just use good old page up. Now I know it's exactly at the right height of those pipes. Alright, and that distance is just slightly too far, so I'm going to need just a normal conveyor pole, stackable, and then a stackable pipeline. And now I should be able to connect all this. Perfect. The heavy modular frames will be the one on the top. 1,000 aluminum casings are going to get plugged into that splitter, meaning 500 are going to go this way. And then I just do the same thing for the other side. And now we're on to the second to last floor. So close. This one is going to be doing the radio control units. For this, I need 8 manufacturers. You guessed it, I made another blueprint. This one has the manufacturers spaced out just enough so that I can place all 4 of the splitters right down the middle, and still has enough to easily go into all of the inputs. So since this is the only thing going on this floor, let's go ahead and just find the very center. So this right here is the center line. So I just want to place 2 of them on one half and then 2 on the other. Go ahead and make sure that we give it enough space to do the little bit of load balancing there in the middle. So there's the first two, second two, 3, and 4. Go ahead and set this recipe. I'm going to be using the default radio control unit. I'll need some more aluminum casings, the crystal oscillators, and the computers from below. Ooh, starting to run low on power shards. I'm going to have to slug hunt soon. These will be overclocked to 200%. Sure beats placing 16 manufacturers. The other great thing about this recipe is I actually only have 3 inputs, not 4, so I can just delete this very top layer. There we go, a little bit shorter. And obviously the load balancing for this is going to be pretty easy. Just 3 splitters on either side there. And then 1 set in the very middle. The inputs will come in through here, get load balanced across. And then for the outputs, I'll do the same thing I did with all those other manufacturers. It'll all get grouped up and make a loop all the way around the floor over to the item elevator over here. One last floor to go. There we go. All the appropriate speed belts are in. And we've got another floor to work on. The final floor. And to be honest, I probably could have squeezed all these machines on the floor below, but I think it probably would have been pretty cramped, and well, for the final product, I felt like it just deserved its own floor. The pressure conversion cubes, strangely enough, only need assemblers. So this floor is going to have plenty of free space, and I'm just going to lay these out the same way I did the floor below. I placed all of the machines and did all of the basic belt work. Then I made the realization that I just placed twice as many as I actually need. And sure, I could do a lot of things, but I am just going to underclock them, because if I don't have this many machines, I definitely should have put them on the floor before. So I have to make an excuse for having them all on their own floor. And this will just give me some of my power shards back. And you know what? That's alright. That means I've got all of the machines in the tower and most of the basic belt work done. Now it's the fun part of getting everything to where they're supposed to go. I started adding the lifts, and I got through basically the first 2 floors. For the first floor, it's pretty simple. We just got the iron that comes in, and then that's just going to plug in from down here somewhere. And the way I do this is I basically just go to the machines and I find the input. So for those, they just need the iron ore. Then I come up to the next floor, and then I just go section by section of machines. So these ones need the aluminum ingots. That's going to be the farthest one because all of these other belts are going to need to go around here and farther. So then I would find this one needs the limestone, so that one comes in. Those ones need the copper sheets. And so that's how I kind of figure out the order of the belts that I want to plug in. And then from there, those are all going to be coming from the very bottom floor. And then I just added some signs. Once there's enough floor holes, it can get a little confusing. And I should be able to use that method to go through all of the floors and get everything connected to where it's supposed to go. And by the end, I'll just have all of the inputs that I need to plug into these floor holes to get the whole factory running. And that's why you see the copper sheets come out here and go along here. So when I have things like this, the way I try to do things, I'll stick the floor holes to basically like 9 to a foundation. And that way it leaves just enough room to run along the seam of a foundation. Just like this. It gives me just enough wiggle room to get belts going from one side to the next when I need them to. And I don't have to worry about lifts running through them when they go all the way up or down. And so everything was going fine, but then I came up to this floor, and these first 2 machines, I had completely forgotten that I needed 100 of the copper sheets to come up to this floor. The rest of them are going to this floor and this row of machines. Which means I can't just group them all up onto one belt. I need to add a little bit more for some load balancing. This happens to be the same floor I'm doing that on the other side, so it kind of fits. And here's the diagram I'm going to be working with. I have 420 copper sheets. I need 320 to go one way and 100 to go the other. Thankfully, I can divide all of these numbers by 20, and that's what you're looking at on the diagram. Doesn't take up too much space going this direction. It'll be slightly longer going that way actually. So I'm going to start here, and that is our very first merger. That's going to go into a splitter. And then I've got 2 splitters next to it. 1 splitter above that one. And then just a couple of mergers. So one will go here. One will go here. And one last one on this side. I'll do the same thing I did on that side and add some wall holes and have it clip through the foundation. The initial 420 is going to plug into this merger. The amount that's going to get looped back is going to be 60. So this belt will end up being 480. Then we'll have 160, 160, and 160. 80 and 80. 40, 40. And split that in half so we have 20 and 20. So now I've got the 60 that I needed to loop back. Here is my 100. And here's my 320. Now I can continue going through and getting things plugged up to where they're supposed to go. And then I'll get to do a little bit of load balancing down here. Isn't it glorious? Oh, look at all those lifts. So in some places I needed to get a little bit creative to get things from one place to another. So from here it had to go up, but these were just slightly not quite aligned. So needed to do this little thing. And in a couple places, this is the one downside of the way that I laid it out, where pretty much all of the inputs are coming from this side, but all of the outputs are coming from this side. So as we go up in the factory, eventually I need to take things from one side over to the other so that they could plug in. In a number of my smaller factories, I would kind of alternate which side the inputs were on so that I could kind of avoid that. I don't know how easy it would have been with this factory, or at least it would have taken a lot more planning than I did. So you could probably rearrange this to avoid some of that. But there's no clipping, and I got everything to where it's supposed to go. And then with the 2 to 3 belt balancer, the very top one goes to the closest machine. The second one just goes into old stubby here. And then it goes into the next machine. And then the very bottom one goes all the way down to the last one. Thankfully that was pretty easy busy work. Now we're back down to the basement where it gets a little bit more complicated again. Taking a look at all of the amounts I need to plug in. And then there's the one output of the pressure conversion cubes. But everything else we need to plug in. And thankfully, a lot of these items just go to one place. Like limestone, there's only one thing of limestone and it all fits on one belt. So I just need to get that plugged in and it's good to go. I do have a couple things like the aluminum casings obviously need to go to 2 places. But that amount of aluminum casings won't fit on one belt. Since I need to bring them in on 2 belts, I might as well just bring them in at the speeds that they need. Which is what I will do for the aluminum casing and the copper ingots. Because that needs just 40 more than what will fit on a Mark 6 belt. Because of course that's how much I need. That leaves me with plastic and rubber. So let's run through these ratio splits real quick. So I'm going to have all of the belts just run right along the swamp floor. And they're just going to plug in right here. And so I should be able to put this fairly close. 2 foundations should be enough space. And I'm going to start with a merger, and then 6 splitters in a row. From here, I just need a couple of mergers. One to the left of the last splitter. We go back to the 3rd splitter from the end. There will be one merger here, and I'm going to spin this one around because that is going to be the one that loops back to the 1st merger. And then on this side, I need these 2. Now in my diagram, I have them spaced out to the side so that everything kind of flow this way. But since I know that these are actually going to end up plugging into spots up here, I can just do these in a straight line. Because this is just going to end up with a lift. To get the right belt speed, I just need to take all of these numbers on my diagram and multiply by 5. 685 plastic is going to get plugged into this merger. With the amount that's getting looped back, this is going to turn into 720. Splitting that 3 ways puts 240 on each one. And then to do that for both this and the next one, I just need some stubby lifts. So go ahead and place those. This one's a Mark III. And then we're going to do the same thing with this 240. So that would be 80 on each one. That's got 480 going into there. Plus the 160. This has 640 on here. For the rest of it, we've got 80 going into this splitter. So that's 40 and 40. So I guess I'll need to bring this lift in by 1, but that's easy. Get that placed first. 20 and 20. There's 10 and 10. 5 and 5. And here's the 35 I need to loop back. And here's the other 45 that I need to send off. And now we come to what is probably the biggest amount of load balancing I get to do. And the reason it's so big is I have 930 and I want to send that into 4 different places. But of course, those aren't completely nice and easy numbers to work with. And so we're going to have to split it more ways and do the whole looping back thing. The one thing I will say was really nice is all of the numbers were divisible by 10. So for any of the numbers on the diagram, just add a 0. I've got plenty of space down here. And of course, we start with the merger. And then we're going to switch to a splitter. We're going to place 6 in a row. From here, I'll place a couple more mergers. And I'm just going to have this one face that way because that's where it needs to go. And now we switch back to this side with a couple more splitters. Going from the second splitter from the start, I'm going to place one more splitter that's in line with both of these. And then this one is going to go up to here. So as long as I keep the spacing the same, where I give myself 1 meter of a gap kind of in each direction, my little grid diagram here should work pretty well. So this splitter will go here with another one right here. Now let me switch to some mergers. We've got 2 mergers and then a splitter in line with this one with another splitter behind it, but its input is facing the main row. And then I think last but not least, 1 more merger. It's just a couple mergers and splitters, right? So all I need to do to get the right speeds for the belts is multiply by 10. So this is going to be 960, which gives me 320, 320, and 320. 160 and 160, 80 and 80, 40 and 40, 20, 20, 10 and 10. It's just really nice when you get to deal with these kind of numbers. For the part that's going to loop back, I'm going to go ahead and just use old stubby here. So I'm going to nudge this up and then over 4 meters. And that's just a nice easy way to do it. And then I can do the same thing on this side. Now this needs to get looped back over to there. So there's a couple different ways. Nudge it up the 2 meters and then over to the side 4 meters. I can get a stubby lift to fit right here. And I'll have to mess with the belt. And we're only looping back 30, so we just need mark 1. There we go. And then we just follow the diagram for the rest of this. And just like that, I can turn my 930 rubber into 400, 240, 150, and 140. I'm definitely going to add a few signs and probably some throughput monitors just to make sure. But now I can get those plugged up to where they're supposed to go. Now there's belts and lifts everywhere. Oh, I love how busy it's getting. And they lead all the way back to the train station. So let's go ahead and go this way. There were a few last machines that I needed. My plan was to always put them over here at the train station. I just kind of forgot that I already placed them here. I made a blueprint for 3 assemblers, so I just have 2 of those next to each other. And these are going to be making the aluminum casings that I need. So to explain why this is over here and not over at the main factory, here's a little snapshot of the spreadsheet. I need 1,640. If I were to make exactly that with this recipe, which if I'm going to make this many, this recipe is a bit more efficient as far as the aluminum goes, so I would like to use the alternate. I would need to deal with 2/3 of an aluminum ingot and 1/3 of a copper ingot. That's not something I want to deal with now or have leftovers later on. But if I round up by 10 aluminum casings, then I have really nice even numbers. I need exactly 2,200 aluminum ingots and 1,100 copper. The reason I'm making it over here at the train station, I'm going to be making the 10 extra, and probably it's just going to go to a sink, but hey, it's at the train station if I need more. Now, I do have more aluminum and copper here, so if another factory does need aluminum casing, then I just need to make 10 less, hopefully. So that is the reason these are over here. Each of these belts are going to have 1100 on there. One belt of 1100 aluminum ingots can feed 3 assemblers. And then all of the copper thankfully fits on one belt. I'll just need 2 aluminum belts to plug into there. So now if we head on down through here, here's what I need to plug in where. So as you can see, I'm going to use a couple sushi belts, so to make things a little bit more full this way. And that way I don't have to stack the belts on top of each other. I can just have them all laying flat, which I like. Now I just need to plug in a whole bunch of things. So I could get started on plugging in some things, like the rubber and the plastic. I'm just going to set up the sinks over at the factory so that it's one, easier to turn on, and it's just easier to get it all over there first. But a whole bunch of those things that I need to plug in coming from right here. Finally time to do a little bit of load balancing on this side. So this is going to be a little bit of a mess. So I think I'm probably just going to skip ahead and I'll show you the diagrams that I used to do this. But let me show you the trick to kind of moving everything around. For a bunch of these, I'm probably just going to place some more sinks just off to the side over here and just plug them up there just to get them out of the way, because I'm going to need this space to work with. But for these right here, let me show you how I do it. This very first line of copper, let's go ahead and have that feed to the very first thing that I need copper to go to, which would be this input. Well, one of these two inputs needs the 1100 copper. This belt right here has 1125. So if we take 1125, we divide by 25. I need to take 1/45 off this belt. So to work with this one, and I just want to do this load balancer basically where the sink is, this is how I work with an area like this. I'm going to take a smart splitter and place it right here. And I'm going to make sure that my sink is powered on. We'll grab a belt, plug it into there. And now we'll go into the smart splitter, and I'm going to say none going forward, and all of it is going to go into the sink. Now I can delete this, and now I can work with this area, and then when I'm ready for this to go on its correct path, I can go ahead and just delete this. And I'll go through this load balancer, and then I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead, and I'll show you the diagrams that I'm going to use for basically for all of the rest of these, because I'm going to use, let's see, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. There's only going to be one belt of copper left untouched. These are all pretty straightforward as long as I follow my diagram. So we start with a merger, and then 5 splitters in a row. Followed by a couple of mergers, 1 on this side, and then 2 on this side. Start at the first splitter, and then 2 more. 1125 is going to get plugged into this merger. It's going to end up looping back 75, and so this belt right here is going to end up being a full 1200. Now to make sure that it doesn't have issues merging or anything, even though this part that's getting looped back is only going to have 75 on this belt, I'm going to make this one Mark 6 as well. So hopefully the merger doesn't have any issue combining the two and making this a full 1200 belt. That's my hope anyways. I'm going to split the 1200 all 3 ways. So that would be 400, 400, and 400. Now there's 800 on that belt. There's 200 and 200. Let's keep splitting that in half. So there's 100 and 100. 50, 50. And there's the 25, and there's the 75 I needed to loop back. And now I have exactly 1100 on this belt. So let me just work my way across the floor here, and I'm just going to replace all of these sinks with a whole bunch of load balancers. And then I'm going to get those plugged into the appropriate spots there. And I'm going to get the aluminum casings turned on early, because since 10 of them are going to stay here in the factory, it's just going to be easier to get all of this taken care of. That way I can have everything on the belts, and I'm just going to add some more sinks out here. And then when I'm ready to turn on the factory, I just need to delete a couple smart splitters. And this is what it turned into. So a few less sinks, and that's because things are sorted to where they're supposed to go, and they're already sinking right outside the factory. So here is the first one, and that's the 25 that I have free. So it's joining up with the other parts that I have free and going into some sinks right up here. For the next bit of copper, I needed 400. So I'm taking the 1125 and splitting it 400 and 725. With both of the 1200 belts of aluminum ingots, they're exactly the same. I just needed to take 100 out of there. And so those are the simplest load balancers down here. Just taking off 1/12 is pretty easy. So it's got 1100 on this one and 100 on that one. The two 100s are then being grouped up with this one, because this is a 1200, this is a 1200, this is a 600 belt of aluminum ingots. And so this load balancer is taking the 600 and splitting it 580 there, and then 20 is getting grouped up with the two belts of 100 that I had from the other load balancers. Out of that whole aluminum factory I just made of 3,000 aluminum ingots, this is what I have left, 580. And then with the last one, I have 285 copper free. This is taking my 1125 and splitting off 840. I'll be honest, all of this works fine right now, but it doesn't completely work in the long run. All of these load balancers work great, and they will continue to work great. There's no issues. My only issues down here are going to be these two, because trying to make this a full 1200 belt just is not working out well for me in the long run. Over a long period of time, this belt starts to back up. So I am going to need to change this, but I'll go over that solution in just a little bit. First, let's go ahead and get that aluminum turned on. I've got all of my aluminum and copper ingots ready to go. Just need to delete these smart splitters and the sinks. Well, that started up nice and fast. And if we go in here, the aluminum casings are getting grouped up in those groups of 3. And then they're just heading up to the same floor that I'm doing all the load balancers for my trains. And this is where I'm splitting off the 10. Each of these assemblers are outputting 275. That means this belt has 825. And on this belt, we've got 825. And this is the load balancer and the diagram I used to do it, to siphon off 10. So I've got 10 that's just going to head off and down into a sink for hopefully another project in the future. And then with the rest of the load balancing, I'm getting it split into the two different amounts that I needed. I've got 640 between this belt and this belt being grouped up with the 80 Caterium, and then those are going on their sushi belt to the factory. The remaining bit is getting grouped up with the 825 from those assemblers. And so this belt has the 1000 aluminum casings I need for the fuse modular frames. Alright, so let's talk about the horrible decision I made, and a big reason why this video took a little bit longer to come out than I would have liked. At this location, I've got two good options for the nitrogen gas. We are right here in the swamp. There is nitrogen gas right here, but there's quite a bit of stuff in the way, and it's a decent distance, especially out to the actual factory, which is over here. Or I have this nitrogen node, which I have a train station directly on top of, which is also making aluminum ingots over there. I could very easily turn a whole bunch of those extra aluminum ingots into a bunch of the empty fluid tanks, and I only need to create them once, because then I can just make a closed loop of the canisters, and I could just do this by train. Because I already have this train running back and forth, which is going to be doing the Caterium and the quartz. I can easily just delete these and add on two more freight platforms and just have one of them deal with the packaged nitrogen gas. The other one will have the empty fluid canisters. And I really thought that this was going to work. So I got this all set up. The train is running, and the way I thought that I could do this would be to just have the train station be basically my buffer. I've got tons of packaged nitrogen in here, I probably need a little bit more. And then this is completely full. Normally when you're doing the loading or unloading of a train, you want to use the buffer. And the reason for that is it pauses the belts or the lifts for that 28-30 seconds when it's doing its docking animation. But if this machine is completely full and it's going through 125 per minute, in 30 seconds it's going to go through about half of that, which is definitely not more than 100. And so I don't actually need to use a buffer for this. This would work fine because it's only going to one machine. If this had to feed two machines, then it would run out and I would absolutely need a buffer. And so the whole loop of canisters didn't end up being the issue. Well, it was an issue until I added more. The first problem I ran into was easy to fix. But in the long run, when I got this factory up and running using the packager like this, I think my issue came down to the fact that it's a gas and it's not a liquid. And this is going to be probably the one and maybe only time I say this. I actually wish that nitrogen was a liquid for this because I think a pump would have solved all of my issues. But a pump on a gas pipe completely breaks it. I played around with this for hours. I think I spent an entire day playing with the nitrogen and the pipes and trying to get this all to work. I added a fluid buffer on this side. I added a fluid buffer over in the factory. I tried it with valves in different spots, and they always ended up having the same exact issue. It still functions like the liquids in a lot of ways. And by that, I mean, I think there's still a good amount of sloshing in the pipes. And I'm pretty sure that was my issue. The factory needs 500 per minute, so it's not like the pipes can't handle it. But even with buffers, there would end up being a sloshing, and it wouldn't even happen all the time. But I would say probably once every 5 minutes, the nitrogen gas would just completely back up. The machine would pause for a few seconds, and then it would start again. It would go down to 98%. It would work its way back up to 100 for a couple minutes, and then the same thing would happen. The empty fluid tanks weren't backing up because the same thing was happening. It's able to empty them plenty quick when the train does dock for its 30 seconds. It doesn't build up to 100, so it was never the empty fluid tanks that was stopping the machines. It's just all of a sudden the gas wouldn't have enough space to go, and the machine would go from 0 completely back up and shut off for a couple seconds, and then start unpackaging more gas. And maybe I just didn't give it enough time and the whole system just needed hours to equalize. But I felt like I gave it a pretty good amount of time with the factory running pretty steady for a while, and it would just still keep happening. All of the machines in the factory would stay on at 100%. It was mainly just this machine that I was noticing was intermittent. And my fear is that eventually there just wouldn't be enough nitrogen gas because that was happening. And then after a really long time, that factory wouldn't be running at 100%. And it would probably be really, really close. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal if it was going to go to anything else, except for I need the pressure conversion cubes to make singularity cells, because those are going to be going into my nuclear power plant. So this is one of those parts that I really want to run at 100%. So let's put a pin in this and let's talk about the other issue that I spent just too much time trying to figure out. I tried a number of things. Originally, I tried the faster speed belt, and then I tried a priority merger, and eventually what was happening is the belt would just start to slowly back up, and if I checked the refineries, they were starting to build up extra ingots. So obviously it didn't quite work like I designed. And that's how I came up with this solution. I know I've said this a number of times, but storage containers aren't mergers, except for the few cases where you really need them to be mergers. So this is one of those cases where I can basically manipulate the storage container into being the merger for me. Because I think that's ultimately what the issue is with these situations, is because I have 1125 and then only 75. The mergers just don't have enough initial storage to kind of handle that imbalance and the crazy speed that the Mark 6 belts move everything at. So by having a belt of 1125 feed into the storage container, and then a belt of 75 that's going to get looped back into here, as long as there's a handful of extra copper ingots, this will stay at a completely full 1200 belt. But to fix this one and this one, I basically had to turn off all of my other load balancers because the aluminum casings are relying on these, so that meant I needed to sink the aluminum, and so I just went outside, added a whole bunch of temporary sinks, and now we can turn all of this off and watch the new load balancer come to life. Ah, it's beautiful, isn't it? So with these, as we can see, it just needs to have some extra. So what I'm going to do to make sure that this kind of just stays the way it's supposed to, I'm just going to take a couple ingots and then just leave that stack in there. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Because once it has a full stack in there, that means that this will stay completely full as long as it's receiving that same amount. And there we go. Reading the numbers we're looking for. So the 25 is going off to the sink. We've got the 1100 going off to make the aluminum casings. And all the other balancers are reading what they're supposed to be. And anytime I check, it should just be basically somewhere in the low to mid 70s. It'll fluctuate a little bit just because this 1125 is so bursty, where you see it's just solid ingots and then it gets broken up a bit, and now it's going to be solid ingots for a bit. So since both of those belts do that, they'll just kind of fluctuate a lot, but I should be able to come back and it's basically going to read the same numbers. If it has more than one stack or it's completely empty, that means I'm in trouble. I've pretty much gotten everything taken care of. I need to run power throughout the factory, and I'm going to do a little bit of decorating. It's probably going to be a little bit lighter than some of my other ones. I spent so much time on all this other stuff. I'm just not going to line every single window with lights this time. Like I said, I spent probably an entire day trying to get the nitrogen to work this way just because I wanted to use trains and I think they're fun. And I was trying to avoid what I'm going to end up doing, which is using the nitrogen node that's right over there. There's actually a little cave right under here, and I'm going to have the pipe run through there. It'll come out this way into the train station, and then it'll just replace that packager and head on into the factory. And so this was a fun idea, but it just wasn't quite reliable enough, unfortunately. So let me take care of all that, and then we'll go on the final tour. Welcome back to my new pressure conversion cube tower. All the parts that I need from the train station are being sunk right outside the factory. All that's left is to delete those smart splitters in these sinks, and the factory will get started. But before we do that, let's take a quick little tour. I encased my assemblers, making all the aluminum casings in just a bunch of glass basically, and then just a few frame foundations for supports. Since the last time we looked, nothing really has changed on the inside of the train station. Everything is thankfully still working just the way it's supposed to be. I evened out the two containers, so now they should be both just right around 60. If I check this one and this one, they're both basically exactly the same. And every time I check, they should be right around there. And then I'll know the system is working just as intended. The final product will be headed into the train station here, and it's going to go into its own sink. Soon enough, I'll put those on a train and ship them out. But for now, I'll take some more coupons. Instead of there being a packager, if we head over here, we have the pipe that heads off into the factory. So if we trace it all the way back, it comes through this wall, out through the forest here, curves around here, down into here, and through this cave, right next to the SAM that's really bright for some reason. And here we are at the nitrogen well. I haven't dressed this up yet because I really don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of the nitrogen, so I don't know if maybe I need another train station over here or what I'm going to do with it. So I know famous last words, but eventually I will come back here and try to dress it up a little bit. But until then, at least it looks nice and clean. One of the reasons I know I won't have an issue with the nitrogen gas now is because both of these are pure nodes. So I'm putting 600 in this pipe, but the factory is only going to be using 500. And because resource well pressurizers don't ever turn off, even if they back up completely, I don't have to worry about this thing turning off and on because these things backed up a little bit. It'll just keep running, and I'll have a little bit too much nitrogen in the pipe. And at this point, I don't really care, because I really doubt I'm going to use all the nitrogen in the world. Almost to the main factory. I've got the limestone and the iron node right out here. These just needed a real short section of belt to get into the factory. Which brings us to the main event. With most of my factories, I kind of have one idea, and then I build that out, and then I try to think of a way that'll kind of complement it. With this one, I decided I wanted the corners to stick out with one whole foundation. So I placed that foundation just all the way up the factory. And to close off this gap, I had a couple of different options. I could use the beam or the road barriers to just make this a flat wall across. And really, if you use any of the corner foundations, you can alternate the normal one and the inverted one and create a bunch of different cool patterns with either just the normal corner, or you can alternate the down corner ramp and the inverted one. And you can make fun patterns with things like that. But for this one, I decided to just use the inner corner extension and just zoop that vertically all the way up. Even with all of these new beams, I still default to the painted beam, probably more than I should. So I wanted to switch it up, and these ones are using the new H beams, which are really nice because, actually let's just delete one, so you can see it right where it ends a little bit better. It splits it right down the middle. So if you have two different colors, it's a great way to split it, and you still get to see most of the foundation on either side. But it's a real nice way to kind of highlight the difference in between the two materials or the two different colors. I've got a ground entrance to the logistics floor. So I've just got some foundation stairs and then just kind of boxed it in with just foundations and then some ramps. Really just another excuse to use the new roll-up gates. We've got the iron and the limestone going straight up to the ceiling and then into their floor holes. Got all the rest of the load balancing that we've already gone over. And then I've got my elevator in the corner. Instead of having it attached on the outside, I just deleted all the foundations in one of the corners and threw the elevator in there. And then once we get up to the normal floors, we've got the item elevator here, so you can see all of the items mostly going up, although I think the one in the very back is the one where the final product is going down. And then I've got my hypertube to take me back to the train station. And most of the floors are basically going to look like this. Not too much has changed. I ran the power the same way on, I think, all of the floors, where I use the painted beam along the ground. Just gives me a place to put the wall connectors. And I think it keeps it pretty clean, and it's a little bit less hassle than running it straight through the machine onto the floor below. Most of the floors are going to look like this, so I'm not going to go through and show you all of them, but the next floor is a little bit different. This is the floor where I needed to add a little bit of extra on both sides. And this is how it turned out. So we've got a nice view of all of the items. And then on this side, we've just got a 2-meter ramp that brings us up here. And then we've got the load balancing and then just another 2-meter ramp. And then I did the same thing on that side. And really, I needed to go up that high so that these didn't clip into anything. So I've just got the glass floor foundation so you can see all of the load balancing going on. And then I just kept it really simple and just used a stack of foundations as support. But I think it works pretty well. And then same thing on this side, although this side didn't need to stick out quite as far. So that support just ended up clipping halfway through, but I actually kind of like the way that it looks. And like I said before, because this factory and project as a whole just took me so long, sorry about that, I decided to keep the decorations a little bit light, made it a pretty just clean and simple factory. I don't think there's any signs for decoration, which is a first in quite a while for me. But that is okay. I'm sure my computer doesn't mind if I skip out on a few signs here and there. Well, I think it's about time we watch this thing come to life. Before we show this off, I guess I should mention it. There are a whole bunch of temporary sinks set up in here because it was just going to be way too hard to get everything just timed correctly and so that things didn't back up. And usually things will still work out in the end, but I didn't want to have to clear out the empty lines. I like to watch everything just flow. And so by having the sinks in here for the things that'll show up quite a bit faster, and then I can just delete them when the slower thing shows up, will make this startup process just a little bit smoother. First step, going to connect the miners to power. and then I'll head over and delete the smart splitters and the awesome sinks. And here we go. Just in case, instead of deleting them right away, I'm going to change the smart splitters to any into the factory and overflow to the right, just in case anything does back up. I don't think it will, but I can come back once everything is running and just delete these then. Because I've already made nuclear pasta, these aren't the first pressure conversion cubes I've made, but these are the first ones in bulk I'm making. Let's see how long it takes to get up to 20 per minute. I think because of the way things are spaced out and the cycle time of these things, I think I'm just going to see a bit of fluctuation on this belt, unfortunately. And it didn't take too long. They started showing up here at the train station. So let's take a look. I was sitting at 5 to 5.5 million points per minute before. 8.1. Not bad so far. Let's see how high it goes. Well, looks like we hit 10.4, then it dropped, and then we're back up to 10.3. Since it took the factory a little bit to level out into the 20 per minute, I'm going to guess we'll probably get somewhere around that 10.4, maybe even a 10.5 as a high, and it'll just do the same fluctuating that it was doing before. Just doubled all of my sync points with one factory. I'll take it. Before I end this one, there is one last trick that I forgot to show off before we got all this started, but it doesn't hurt to do it now. The elevator is a little bit taller than it normally is. So for this, let's just set a temporary foundation down here. I think that's about how low the elevator goes down into the basement. So if I place the elevator here and we stretch it as far as it can go, it stops well before this elevator does. But that is all one elevator. When I was making my rocket fuel power plant, I ran into this issue. And so I have two elevators stacked on top of each other, and on one of these floors, yeah, actually I think it's that one right there, you have to take some stairs to go from one level up to the next, and then you can take the second elevator to the rest of the floors. Now that right there is a pretty long distance, to be honest, and that is by far the much quicker option, is just to place a second elevator. With this factory, I wasn't that far off from being able to do it with just one elevator. And so there is a trick. You can actually extend these. It's just kind of a pain. And so thanks to that comment, and then later I saw a video by Kinstruction. He's a fantastic Satisfactory content creator, so definitely check him out. And so he has a video that shows you how to do this. But the gist of it is, I've placed the elevator at the max height it'll go. To extend this, what I need to do is press H to lock it in place, and then I'm going to click the left mouse button, and it's going to go red. And now what you do is rinse and repeat. I click H again, and then the left mouse button, and that just extended it by 1 meter. So I basically need to press H twice and the left mouse button twice for every meter I want to extend this. And I think Kinstruction just made a macro to do this, which is a much smarter idea, but I didn't have too far to go, so I just brute forced it. And, you know, you get used to it after a while. You just kind of keep clicking and pressing H. The only annoying thing is because every time you extend an elevator, it rebuilds the entire elevator. You just have this constant just craziness on your screen while you extend it. And just like that, our max height was 196, but now I've just extended it to 216. And this one, I went ahead and just left blank. I didn't name the very top floor. This one's at 248. Another fun trick for those of you that use the elevators. And that is going to do it for this one. Thank you for being patient. I knew this one was going to take an extra day or two, and then of course it took a few days longer than I planned to get all the kinks worked out. I'm happy with the way that it turned out, and I'm very excited to get into the next project. I'm going to be shipping all 20 pressure conversion cubes north to the Dune Desert. I'll be building a large train station in the next video out there because the singularity cells won't be the only thing I'll be making. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.